Well, I've been drafted to tell you something about the history of the firm. I'll stop with January of 1975 when I ceased to be managing partner, because I'm sure Alan Holmes and others will fill you in detail on the current firm and its present operations. Through interlocking partners and partnerships, we trace our history into the previous century. But I've always thought that as a practical matter, it's more realistic to think of the firm as finding its present origin in the merger in 1913 of the remnants of two Cleveland firms. One was Blandin, Rice and Ginn, and the other was Klein, Tolles and Goff, both of which had been formed in the 1890s. In the one firm, Judge Blandin retired. Rice was murdered as he walked near his country place one evening. I suppose that's out about 55th Street now. Anyway, it shows that there was lawlessness in Cleveland even that early date. And that left Frank Ginn as the remaining named partner. Young, brilliant, resourceful, imaginative. He was, I think, the outstanding business and financial lawyer in the area until his death in the 1930s. The other firm was Klein, Tolles and Goff. Virgil Klein retired after being a leading corporate and business lawyer in Cleveland. He worked for John D. Rockefeller Sr., incidentally, whom you recall formed his original Standard Oil Company in New Jersey here in Cleveland. Well, anyway, he retired. Fred Goff of that firm left it to become the president of the Cleveland Trust Company. And that left S.H. Tolles, Shirley Tolles, who was a great fellow, really. Little rotund sort of a man, built like a beer barrel. He practiced law behind a great expansive desk in a rocking chair. And he'd rock back and forth, had a meerschaum pipe that lay on his chest like a small saxophone. He was really the leading law lawyer in Ohio, and so recognized. So Frank Ginn and Shirley Tolles added Tom Hogsett, who was a trial lawyer in another firm, and John Morley, a cousin of Tolles, to form the firm of Tolles, Hogsett, Ginn and Morley in 1913. I joined the firm 8 years later, 1921, day after I got out of law school and at the ripe old age of 21. And it's been my privilege to observe at close range and participate over the ensuing years in the great development and growth that has occurred. I think in retrospect, it's easy to see that small firm moving over the years through 4 different time periods or eras, just as different as night from day from each other, politically, socially, economically, every way. The first of these was the period of the Roaring Twenties, and they were Roaring Twenties. Period of great confidence, ebullience, everything was coming up roses for everybody forever. And we did pretty well during that period. When I joined the firm in 1921, I was given number 13, which I still have, which I assume meant I was the 13th lawyer. In 1929, we'd grown to 20 lawyers and had a prosperous small business based to a very considerable degree on the work for 3 large financial institutions. One was the Union Trust Company, which was the largest, most active bank in Ohio, built this building into which we moved when it was completed in 1924. That was the big account. Another was Otis and Company and its affiliate, presided over by this brilliant entrepreneur, Cyrus Eaton, who had the biggest, most prosperous investment banking house between New York and Chicago. And that was a big account. And the third were the Van Swearingen brothers, who first appeared on the scene as a pair of young boys selling newspapers on the Cleveland streets. They became real estate operators, bought Shaker Farm, allotted Shaker Heights, got control of the Nickel Plate Railroad to give them a right of way from their allotment into Cleveland. That put them in the railroad business. And they ended up in control of the Chesapeake and Ohio, the Nickel Plate, Missouri Pacific, some other carriers. And that was a big account. So we ended the 20s in a feeling of great confidence for the future. Everything was just going to be wonderful. And then the roof caved in overnight. We went from the period of the roaring 20s in the dire depression of the 30s, which was a dire period in every way. From the pleasant job of working for clients helping create their small financial empires in the 20s, we spent much of the 30s presiding at their financial funerals. The three biggest clients that I mentioned, they all went under, all went bankrupt. So here we were, a small firm, some pretty fair lawyers, but damn little law to practice, and confronted with the necessity of building a law business in the period of the greatest depression that has ever occurred. But we made it, we got away with it, and assisted by the acquisition of another small firm. By the end of the 30s and 39, we had over 35 lawyers. And then overnight, that era was gone, and we were in World War II. Wholly different in every way from anything that had ever gone before. Here we were, those of us who were too old to go to war, doing the best we could to help our clients convert from civilian work to war work, and doing it without the great indispensable element to good legal practice, which is the backup and support of young lawyers. They'd all gone to war. But we got away with it. We added to our staff somewhat by hiring some law professors who were fresh out of students and needed a job. And so by the time the war was over and our young men came back, and that era was ended, we had grown again. When I became managing partner in 1948, we had over 45 lawyers, and entered upon the fourth period, which I have mentioned. That was the generation, the 25 years that ensued of the greatest building and growth and prosperity that's ever been known. And we shared that. After the end of the war, we established our first branch operation in Washington. Just a handful of lawyers, but augmented that in 1967 by merging with a 14-man firm, Pogue & Neal. And that gave us the nucleus out of which our present Washington office has been built. In the early 70s, we established an office in Los Angeles. Since then, one in Columbus and another in Dallas. So from a small firm with 13 lawyers when I joined it, to 20 lawyers in 29, over 35 and 39, over 45 and 48, we now are over 300, practicing law out of 5 offices throughout the United States. Well, what caused that growth? One element, of course, was the increase in the operations of individual clients. For example, when I first went to work for Thompson Products in the early 30s, they had 2 little plants, 1 product line, and $10 million in annual sales. Today is known as TRW, plants all over the world, throughout this country, Canada, Mexico, Great Britain, Germany, France, Italy, Brazil, Taiwan, you name it. and it'll have this year sales of around $6 billion. So a part of the increase in our business, part of our growth, came from the increased operation of individual clients. But not only a small part of that. The biggest growth came from the acquisition of new clients. New to us, old to the clients, the firms that they left to come to us. Some years ago, I took a list of all the client companies that paid us over a certain amount during the previous year and checked to see how many of them were on our list 30 years prior. Less than 20%. Which meant that a lawyer or lawyers in the firm had had enough appeal to those clients so that they moved their law business to us. And that's been really the biggest element in our growth. Well, what caused that? Why did they come to us? There is and can be only one reason, and that's quality of service. I've said to young lawyers such as yourselves over and over again, if you're known throughout the legal, the business, the financial community of this country as doing better work than your competitor, by which I mean work that's more rewarding to your client, a lot of things take care of themselves. If you don't have that, or if you have it and slide or slip, it can go the other way too. For example, a year ago, Fortune magazine published an article on large law firms. One page they listed the 25 largest, with listing ours is sixth, and had just a 2-sentence characterization of each, which reflected the views the Fortune editors had secured in 100 interviews throughout the country. Some of those comments were a little tough. This firm is slipping, or this firm's work is spotty. What did they say about us? The first 2 words were top quality. Nothing has happened in years gave me as much pleasure as those 2 words. Because I knew the dozens of lawyers that have worked so hard over the years to earn that commendation. Look, enough of this. I'll quit blowing our own horn. Outside of increase in size, what are the other principal developments that I might mention? One is the area in which we operate. When I joined the firm, there was a bunch of individual lawyers, each practicing his own individual law business, just as local as that, almost as a country doctor. Now we are, in fact, truly a national and international firm. We have a broad base of work for the larger corporations headquartered in Cleveland. For example, there are about 35 companies headquartered here that are large enough to be listed in Fortune 1000 largest. We're counsel for over half of them. We're counsel for 3 out of the 4 largest banks in the state. So we have a broad base of local business, but we also have a very large and constantly increasing national business that has really very little, if anything, to do with Cleveland. For example, last year our 5 largest clients, only one was headquartered in Cleveland. General Motors in Detroit, Westinghouse Electric in Pittsburgh, Marathon Oil in Western Ohio, Diamond Shamrock in Dallas, practically nothing to do with Cleveland. With the advent that there's been in transportation and communication, it's quite feasible for a company, law firm in Cleveland to do work throughout the United States. And more of our work is of that character. So that is one of the biggest differences, really, is the transition from a local firm to a regional firm to a national one. And that is increasing every day. Another big change, which may be a correlative of the first one, is the increase in group and team practice. When I joined the firm, it was individual lawyers. that little firm couldn't do but a very small fraction of the work that we do because they couldn't staff it. You have most of the matters of magnitude that we work on now, we don't have a lawyer on it, we got a team. For example, Mobile tries to take over Marathon. We didn't put a lawyer on the defense. I suppose we had 30 lawyers on it, working on one aspect of it or another. And that's been a big difference, really. And that also will increase. Marilyn, what else ought I? Oh, I know. Associate salaries. I always find at least a casual interest in that. Walter Kinder, Gene Kinder's father, graduated from law school and joined the firm the year it was formed in 1913. Paid a salary of $800. That's a year, not a month. I think that figures out to what, $67 a month, some such amount. I came in 1921 at $100 a month. I lived on $100 a month, plus what I made playing poker. And I had some months when things were a little lean when the cards were unkind. But I certainly had no feeling of deprivation. I was just damn glad to have a job. Walter Mildy came in 1928. We went to 150. Chappie Rose came in January of 1933 at 200 for 2 months. In March of that year, we got to the bottom of the Depression, the banks closed, and everybody in the firm was cut 30% overnight. So Chappie came in January at 200 and went to 140 in March. We kept our 200 salary until the end of World War II, went to 300, and from then on, associate salary going just like that. I won't characterize whether it's justified or not. I'll just leave it there. That's the history. What else is of might be a moment to you? This probably meant more to me than it would to you. When I came to the firm, it was just a small group of lawyers. We knew each other intimately. We went fishing together and played poker together. During Prohibition, we'd buy this god-awful alcohol from a cockeyed bootlegger by the name of Walter and make our gin together. It was a very intimate association. You can't have that degree of acquaintance in a firm of 150 lawyers, but we've tried hard to keep just as much the informality and warmth of that small firm as we can. I was acutely conscious of that all the time I was managing partner when we were growing so rapidly, of the fear, the concern I had, we're just going to become a cold institutional type of place, which I'd have hated, having been born and raised in Falls City, Nebraska. So we tried pretty hard not to have that happen. Through some formal mechanisms that you recognize, our monthly meeting of the lawyers at lunch, do a lot of that type of work through our groups of specialists. We got 8 or a dozen of those. That is a group in taxation and another in litigation, another in antitrust, and so on. They meet once a month as a group to consider matters that have arisen in their particular area. Office parties, we give more parties than a neighborhood dance club. We got one tomorrow for you people primarily. Cocktail party. Later in the year we have a golf party, which we desecrate one of the good golf courses. All the lawyers who never see a golf club except on that date. A formal party following Christmas and so on. We tried our best to keep as much as we can of that warm, informal atmosphere that there was at the time when I became to the firm. What else? Oh, let me mention one other thing, and that's the untold story of the practice of law. How much fun it is. This month I will have been with this firm 62 years, and I've had a ball. I can't imagine a greater degree of intellectual diversity and interest that a man could have. Working, of course there's drudgery there's hard work, there always is, anything is worthwhile. But also when you begin to make your mark and get up when the air is a little more clear, you're thrown on as fast as you can take it with clients when you will find extremely able people heading industries that in wholly different occupations. Let me tell you about a week I had some years ago when I was really working. Not because it's typical, because it wasn't, but because it's indicative of what I'm trying to say. I started that week with an early breakfast Monday morning with the executive committee of Midland Ross, one of our larger clients, because I had to get to Los Angeles for dinner with the directors of TRW and their wives. We had a TRW directors meeting Tuesday morning. One of their jets flew me to Houston because I had a Diamond Shamrock meeting there Wednesday. One of its planes flew me to Miami that night because I had an Anchor Hocking directors meeting in Miami Thursday. I flew to New York that night. Only time all week I was on a commercial plane because I had a Westinghouse Electric directors meeting in New York Friday. Westinghouse plane flew me to Pittsburgh Friday afternoon because I had a meeting with the Jones and Laughlin Steel directors Saturday morning. Now when the J&L plane dropped me at the Lakefront Airport Saturday afternoon, I'd had it, I really had. I was pooped. But I'd had a hell of a week, dealing with 6 different groups of very able people, the heads of some of the largest companies in the country, engaged in wholly different industries with wholly different problems. That's the sort of intellectual challenge that makes the practice of law in a firm like ours really a great pleasure. And so I'll apologize for talking too long and make for each of you the best wish I can, and that is that wherever you practice, I just hope you have as much fun out of the practice of law as I've had. Thank you.